There's a photograph from an old promotional shoot. A pop star smiles at the camera. Everything about the picture is ordinary, except for one detail that millions of people have now zoomed in on. On the back of her hand, in dark ink, someone has written a name, and it is not her name. The star is Avril Lavigne. The name on her hand says Melissa. To most people, it is a random photo from a random shoot, but to a corner of the internet that has grown for over a decade, that photograph is evidence. Evidence, they say, of one of the strangest cover-ups in music history. 2002, a 17-year-old girl from a small town in Canada releases her first album, Let Go, and becomes one of the most famous teenagers on the planet almost overnight. 16 million copies, sold out arenas, her face on every magazine. But the people around her described someone who did not enjoy the machine she was now trapped inside. She was shy. She hated the paparazzi. She gave short, guarded interviews with her arms crossed. Fame at that scale is a searchlight that never turns off. And according to the theory we are about to walk through, that searchlight is exactly why what happened next was possible. The theory begins with a claim about that pressure. Believers say her team quietly hired a body double, a professional lookalike, whose job was to be photographed at a distance, to leave buildings, to sit in cars, so that the real Avril could breathe. The theory gives this woman a name, Melissa Vandella. There is no public record that any such person exists. But in the story believers tell, Melissa was more than a decoy. She studied Avril, her voice, her walk, her handwriting, and according to the theory, the photo shoot where Avril has Melissa written on her hand was an inside joke between the two of them, the star and her shadow. Then came 2003, the hardest year of her life. This part is documented. In the middle of her world tour, her grandfather, the man she called her biggest fan, passed away. She was performing to sold-out crowds while grieving. She later wrote the song Slipped Away about losing him. That much is fact. But here, the theory takes its darkest turn. The Brazilian blog that started it all claimed that the grief, stacked on years of pressure, became too much. It claimed that at the end of 2003, Avril Lavigne took her own life, and that what happened next was not a funeral. It was a business decision. According to the blog, the record label was staring at a simple, cold equation. Their biggest asset was gone at the peak of her value, and there was already a woman on payroll who could be her. The blog's exact words, translated from Portuguese, became the theory's founding line. From here, it was no longer the real Avril, but Avril Lavigne, under the skin of another singer. In 2004, the new album arrived. Its title, believers point out, was Under My Skin. They treat the title itself as a confession, hiding in plain sight on 10 million album covers. And they say if you look closely at everything after 2004, the seams start to show. So what are the seams? This is where the theory built its arsenal and why it convinced so many people. Believers compiled side-by-side photographs, thousands of them. They point to moles and beauty spots that appear, vanish, or drift between photos taken before and after 2003. They point to a nose they say became subtly narrower, a jawline they say sits differently. They point to her height against the same people in photos years apart, and they point to her autographs, handwriting samples from 2002 and 2005, laid on top of each other, that they insist do not come from the same hand. Each item alone is nothing. Stacked together, page after page, they start to feel like a case. That is the machinery of every great conspiracy. Volume becomes proof. Then there is the transformation you did not need a magnifying glass to see. The Avril of 2002 was a skater, baggy cargo pants, neckties over tank tops. She once said dresses were not her thing. By 2007 and the album, The Best Damn Thing, the artist on stage wore pink heels and mini dresses and sang bubblegum pop about cheerleaders. Careers evolve, image changes, artists grow up. That is normal. But believers laid the two versions side by side and asked a simple question. Is this growth? Or is this a different person who eventually stopped pretending? Even her voice went under the microscope, with believers comparing live performances from 2002 and 2014, insisting the tone had changed in ways age alone does not explain. Communities formed around the search. On music forums, a group of self-described Avril Rangers compiled the photographs, timed the interviews, and cataloged every mole and autograph like evidence clerks. They analyzed her posture on red carpets. They claimed the new Avril was relaxed with journalists in ways the shy original never was. They even folded her marriage into the file. The real Avril, one widely shared post joked, would never have married the singer from Nickelback. Every fact of her life, big or small, found a place in the theory. And that is the quiet genius of a replacement story. It does not compete with reality. It annotates it. And then believers went into the lyrics. This is the part of the theory that people find hardest to shake. The song Nobody's Home from 2004 describes a girl who is gone, with no place to go. Believers read it as a eulogy. The song together contains the line, "The truth is not far behind me," which the theory treats as the replacement confessing under her breath. And in The Song Slipped Away, the line, "The day you slipped away was the day I found it will not be the same," is reframed by believers as the double mourning the woman she replaced. The real explanation for that song is public and painful. It is about her grandfather, but conspiracy theories do not delete the true meaning. They write a second one over it. By 2012, the theory had grown factions. On one forum, a post appeared claiming the opposite twist. The real Avril, it said, was not dead at all. She was alive in hiding, living quietly while her double worked the stage. The post even offered proof. A paparazzi photograph, it claimed, showed the original singer, years after the switch, buying cheese in a grocery store. Meanwhile, the public Avril was fighting a very real battle with Lyme disease, and believers absorbed that too, reading her years away from the spotlight. As a cover story, wearing thin. One theory had become several. They contradicted each other. Nobody seemed to mind. So where did all of this actually come from? Here is the twist that almost nobody who shared the theory ever saw. It started in May 2011 on a Brazilian fan blog called Avril Está Morta. Avril is dead. The blog laid out the entire story. Melissa, the switch, the clues, the lyrics. But its very first lines said something else. The author wrote in Portuguese that the blog was created to prove a point, to demonstrate how easy it is to make a conspiracy theory look true. It was a media literacy experiment, with its confession printed on line R1. Almost nobody read line 1. The story detached from its disclaimer, crossed the ocean, and in 2015, a BuzzFeed journalist found it and tweeted about it. The theory did not just survive its own debunking, it went global because of it. Then came May 13th, 2017. A teenage Twitter user posted a thread that began, "Avril Lavigne is dead," and was replaced by a look-alike thread. In 48 hours, it collected 92,000 retweets. Rolling Stone covered it. The BBC covered it. It reached hundreds of thousands of likes and crossed into every language. A 6-year-old Brazilian blog post, written as a warning about misinformation, had become one of the most viral conspiracy theories in pop culture history. In 2024, the BBC even launched an entire podcast series asking, "Who replaced Avril Lavigne?" The question mark was doing a lot of work, but the audience was real. None of this is actually new. In 1969, a rumor swept the world that Paul McCartney had died 3 years earlier and been replaced by a lookalike. Fans played Beatles records backwards, hunting for confessions. They found clues on album covers, a barefoot walk across a zebra crossing, read as a funeral procession. Radio stations ran hotlines. Paul had to give interviews proving he was alive. Sound familiar? Same beats, same lyrics turned into confessions, same photographs measured with rulers. The Avril theory did not invent anything. It inherited a formula older than the internet. The internet just made it faster. Every generation, it seems, needs one star who secretly died. And what does Avril Lavigne herself say? She has answered on the record for a decade. In Brazil in 2014, she laughed, "Well, I am here." In a 2017 Facebook Live, she said flatly, "No, I am not dead. I am here." In 2018, an Australian radio host asked her about it, and she said, "Some people think that I am not the real me, which is so weird. Why would they even think that?" And in 2024, on the biggest podcast in America, she called the whole thing so dumb and joked that as far as rumors go, it could be worse. Believers, of course, hear those denials and smile. That is exactly what Melissa would say. And that is the engine of this whole story. A theory built so that every denial feeds it. The blog that started it warned us with its very first line. Almost nobody read that line. Millions read the theory. And somewhere in that gap, between line 1 and everything after it, is the reason stories like this one never die.